Rasputin here. Welcome to the Fortified Castle. And today we're going to be talking about wood scales on knives. I'm part of a lot of knife groups, and I also watch videos online. And there seemed to be some confusion sometimes about what type of wood is used in these knives, and also some misidentification of woods. And also, guys just wonder what kind of wood is in their knife. And so we're going to be talking about that today. And certainly any kind of wood could be used in knives. But since about the 1740s, when mass production of pocket knives started, um, uh, just a couple different woods have been used predominantly, mostly, like 70-80% of the knives produced had just three types of woods. And so we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to give you a description of those woods. Rosewood was the go-to material, characterized by a brown wood with wide-spaced dark grain lines. Over 100 species exist all over the world. It was cheap and easy to obtain. Cocobolo was a premium upgrade, more expensive than rosewood but cheaper than ebony, mainly found in Central and South America. It's characterized by dense wood that could have a natural orange color but most often reddish brown. Ebony is a dense hardwood with a dark color, sometimes with browns in it, mainly obtained from Madagascar or Africa. It is very expensive to obtain. Rosewood and ebony have been endangered species and today are restricted for use. Okay, so primarily we've got those three woods, different kind of woods used in knives. Although any kind of wood could be used and sometimes has been, most of the time, those are the three woods you're dealing with. So when you look at this wood, it looks black, and I get my fancy expensive training aid here, and you can see, it looks black. And so a lot of guys would think that this is ebony, but it's really not ebony. And it's black because the oils in your hands are absorbed by the wood scale, and along with grit and grime, it turns it black. And every knife here every pocket knife you see in front of you was uh, black like this. This knife here was actually darker than this knife right here. And this is a nice rosewood. I've cleaned that grime up, and you can see it has a nice grain to it. Really pretty. And that's what I was after. And so this knife would have been a lot browner when it was brand new. And let me show you an example of that. So this is a rosewood from the 50s and 60s, and you can see the bottom knife would have been the same color as this knife right here when it was new. But that oil has soaked this thing and made it darker. And if you look at this knife right here, I think you can see it's a little brown there. But when you turn this knife over, it's blacker than this knife. You can see that. See how dark it is? And that's the way it was on this side. It's not ebony. It's just um, grime and oils that have turned this knife dark. And so if you look at this knife here, this one is a Cocobolo, and you can see real nice coloring in that. See that? But if you turn it over, it's still really dark on there. In fact, it looks darker than the other knife. And I've cleaned that up, but hadn't been able to get that darkness out of it. That's probably all I'm going to do with this knife, though. And ebony is this knife. And so if we take my fancy training aid again, you can see it's a lot closer to that black. And when you look at this knife really close, you can't see any grain in this knife. It's really, really tight, and that's typical of ebony, is just a real tight grain in the knife. You can see that when you do get a crack, if you look at that crack, it's just long. It's not following any lines, any grain lines in the knife. Very, very tight. Here's another example. This is in better shape, and this is ebony also, and it almost looks like synthetic, but this knife was made 20-30 years before celluloid was ever invented. It's ebony, and a really, really nice example of it too in a penknife. So that's ebony. It cleans up almost like it'll look synthetic. It's so tight, the grain, and so pretty. So this is rosewood, and rosewood, and if you look at the grains on these, they're very similar grains, but the coloring on the Cocobolo is different. And so the rosewood has a brown color to it, and Cocobolo has a reddish color to it. And if you go to clean this knife up, you can take a knife and use a high grit sandpaper. That's not going to refinish your knife or take any wood off substantially. And you sand on it a little bit with the high grit sandpaper, like 800 or 1000, doesn't really matter. And the coloring that comes off your knife is what color the wood is. So when I was sanding this, it comes off as a brown color, and that is Cocobolo. And when you, that's rosewood. And when you take and sand on Cocobolo, it comes off as a very distinct reddish color. And Cocobolo sometimes will even have an orange coloring to it, so orange or reddish brown. But when you sand it, you can tell right away that it's Cocobolo. And the grain patterns are very similar because they're actually very, Cocobolo is actually a subspecies of rosewood. So that's how you can tell the difference between Cocobolo and rosewood. So these woods are primarily used up until 1945, and then they're using less and less wood, and that's because wood is still expensive, even though it's less expensive than mother of pearl or tortoiseshell or ivory. It's still, you have to prepare the wood, you have to stabilize it, you have to sometimes stain it. And so it's just more costly than plastic and synthetics. And that's why you start to see wood go away. So this is from the 60s, 1960 to 1965, and it's walnut. And I don't know whether you can really tell, but this is kind of a golden color and very tight grain. And that's walnut. Kind of looks gold. And I already showed you the rosewood. That's what it would look like. A brown wood with black grain lines in it. And Cocobolo is a little different. So in the 70s, you get prop wood, or 60s, prop wood comes into the scene. And this is another reason for the demise of wood. So prop wood, I don't know this to be fact, but I suspect that prop wood was made with softer woods like pine. This doesn't look like any hardwood that I know of, and I really think that looks like pine. And once it's resin impregnated, it doesn't matter because it's going to be just as hard as hardwood anyhow. And so I think a lot of your prop wood is they use softer woods to make it because it's less expensive. In the 70s, you get things like this, and this is a the way they produce this laminated wood is thin layers dyed different colors, and then they sand it, and it brings out all the layers. And this is glued together with resin too, so it's just as strong as prop wood. This was really popular in the 70s and 80s, and continues to be popular with in gun stocks. So high-end gun stocks are this laminated kind of wood. Another type of wood that you see is burl. So burl is not constrained to any specific species, and burl is where the tree has been damaged and it's tried to repair itself. So basically knots in a tree. And so this burl, as you can see, it looks like grain's going this way, and then over here it's coming down the opposite way, and then it's going sideways. And burl just kind of wraps around and gnarls around and can be really pretty when it's done right. This is in really rough shape here, but I imagine it was pretty when it first came out. This is another example of burl. This is a less expensive knife, but you can see how it just wraps around like a knot, like rope. And it could be on pretty much any species of wood. Usually they do use a hardwood for burl, though, on better knives. So around 2000, you start seeing wood again. So after this time frame here in the 70s, wood just kind of goes away altogether. And in 2000, you start seeing wood again. And the reason is fixed blade manufacturers started putting high-end wood on fixed blades, and there was a market for that. And so the success of those fixed blades bled over into the folders, and that's when you start seeing traditional knives and modern folded knives use wood again. This is curly maple right here. Curly maple tends to have these like tiger stripes. They can be in different forms. You can still see it here. They're not as bright, but that's distinctive of curly maple, those kind of stripes, and it's a light color. So in conclusion, some of the things, how do you care for this and how do you take care of it? So on this knife here, those cracks tell me that this is a dry wood, okay? So it's dried out and it's cracking. And what I would do is I would take a little bit of oil, put it right there, and then rub it in with my finger. You can use a gun cloth or whatever you want, and then do it on the other side, just one drop, and I rub it in, and then I'll wait a couple hours, and that oil will seep into the wood. And then I look at it again and see if it needs another treatment. And so I'll do it 2 or 3 times, whatever the knife needs. And I want to moisturize that wood to keep it from cracking like this. And moisturizing it with oil will do that. You should use a non-distilled oil. So don't use gun oil that has distillates in it that can harm your knife and harm the wood. So you want to use natural oils. Linseed oil is what I use, but you can also use like vegetable oil that you have underneath your sink or wherever you keep your vegetable oil. That'll work. Olive oil, any natural oil that doesn't have distillates in it. And another thing about that, if you took this knife right here and you put oil on it, it's going to darken it. So you have to kind of make a decision on whether you want to preserve the wood or whether you want it to keep that color. And an example of that is this knife right here. So I've not oiled this. The wood is in good shape. It's from the 50s or 60s, and it's not dried out. It's not rotten in any way, and so I just don't oil it. And if I did, this pretty color would go away. It'd get darker. It would look more like that right there. Not as bad as this, but it would darken. So I don't apply oil to wood that's in good shape. And same thing on this knife. I haven't put anything on this knife because if you put oil on it, it's gonna darken the wood, and that's a pretty golden color. I want to keep it. And um, polish will do the same thing. So, like I use a medium grade polish on my metal, on my knives, and it's a fine polish, and it's gray, and that will definitely darken this. The fine polish I have is green. It doesn't darken it as bad, but it'll darken it. And so if you really want to polish this, I'd use like a white polish, which is really fine, and it's used for brass, soft metals, brass, silver, gold, and that's the kind of polish I would use on this if you just have to put polish on it. But any kind of polish will darken it some, as will most other things. So you just got to kind of make that decision on what you want to do. So that's about all I got on wood. I hope that helps you guys out. If you would like to see more content like this, really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, and really appreciate you guys watching the video. So thanks.